This is Rav Meir Shapiro number 8, and I wanted to take a step back and analyze a little bit things that we laid down before that we call Rav Meir Shapiro, use words like a revolutionary, certainly very, very much an activist, and that he would do things which others were against. If you remember, we had this idea of the Cheder Kloladi he wanted to introduce, and there was this nagdus to that. The other, although the Cherkov Rebbe was behind it, others were against it. And he adopted a Gouda, and others were against the Gouda, the Munkacher and Samar, other Hungarian Gedolim, as I understand, were against it. So let's understand these two kavim in Klal Yisrael, these two ways in Klal Yisrael a little bit, try to get perspective. I'm saying it how I see it. I think it's a very, very important thing to lay down. It gives insight into things that go on today, definitely in the Haredi world in Eretz Yisrael, and I think in general, amongst Gedolim, and I emphasize amongst Gedolim, and I'll make that point again. There, as I see it again, there are two basic kavim. I want to say a story that happened. I heard this from my Rebbe, Mendel Blachman, who I think heard it from Betzalel Zolti, the Rav of Yerushalayim, who we used to learn from. The Yitzchak Elchanan, the Rav of Kovna, the great Rav of Kovna, who was not known as a kanoi, wasn't a zealot at all. You can read the books about him. I don't know if we'll do a 5 minutes on him. I don't know so much about him, but definitely was not considered a kanai. He was the greatest posik of his generation. He was a posik really Doros, Gadol Shein Kedugma. So anyway, the story Barrack was this, that there was a person who, the minig in the town where he was the rabbi, I think it was in Kovna at this time, got married outside of the chatzar of the shul, and the minig of the place was one was supposed to get married in the chatzar, the courtyard of the shul, and he got married in his own courtyard. Okay, this is the minig in the town. Doesn't sound like such a terrible thing, and it was an upstanding member of the community. And Rav Yitzchak Chana no less than put the person in a cherem and an excommunication. I don't know if that meant for his whole life, but he was in a certain level of excommunication. And he was asked about this. How could you do this? At the end of the day, what did he do? As opposed to marrying his daughter, and he didn't marry his daughter in a Reform synagogue. He didn't marry her in a church. He didn't marry her without a rabbi. He married her off in his courtyard, as opposed to the shul's courtyard. So Rav Yisrael Chanan answered and explained with the Chazal. Chazal somewhere compare the Torah to a gal shel egozim, a mound of nuts. Right? What's the mashal to a mound of nuts? You can imagine a big mound of nuts. You pull one thing out, everything falls, everything comes apart. Right? You take one part out, and everything falls apart. And so too, Torah is connected. It's all connected. When you start moving things around, then everything goes. Everybody knows the history of the Reform and Conservative, knows that at first they didn't make major changes, but you change something, and then everything starts to come apart at the seams. But it goes further than that. He said, because why is the comparison to a gal shel egozim, of an egos, of a nut? And he said, a tremendous thing, a tremendous insight. Why is that the mashal? Because an egos, a nut, even if there's nothing in the inside, even if there's no panemius to that part of the mound, that structure, but the shell still is important and helps and is part of what holds up the whole structure. Amazing. So therefore, the parts of Yiddishkeit which are even not so meaningful, like this, we have a minig, we have a custom to get married in the shul courtyard as opposed to there. That's only a egos. There's not a serious panim there. It's not something it's not like we say a aver sheneshama tzluibo. It's not all of Yiddishkeit. It's not Emunah. It's not Torah. It's not Emunas Chacham, etc. But Lamaisa, it's also part of the structure. When you start playing around with that, then the whole structure can fall apart. This, my friends, I understand it is what's at the root of those that don't want to change anything. You can't change Kutzah Shel Yud. We can only go with the Masorah, what's given to us door to door, etc. And that's for sure understood, and that makes a lot of sense. And you can bring many, many stories and proofs to why, when you don't go with that things fall apart. And as I said, no better proof than those who know the story and history of the Reform and Conservative world know that things started with a small change. When you start to make a small change, then more things fall apart. Okay, that is one general way of looking at things. So when you're going to introduce something like a new type of a cheder klali, used to be this way and that way, there's a danger, right? You're going to make a new type of yeshiva, a new type of movement called a Gouda. No, we only do what's what was done, and will only continue doing what was done, and don't change anything. Okay, so that represents one side, and I don't want to go past our normal 5 minutes. That's a good stopping ground. Please tune in for Rav Meir Shapiro number 9, where we're going to explain the other side and the balance between them. All the best.